Hello to everyone. Good good day is the safest thing to say, right? It might be morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. So good whatever part of the day it is. Um, I'll fill in the blanks for the next 20 seconds or so. At the start of all these sessions, it's always the case of people finding their seats. If this were a real auditorium, people are sort of uh, closing their phones and making sense. They're finding their seats, getting ready, getting the popcorn out or whatever. So I filled those 20 seconds. Hopefully you've all found your seats. So welcome everyone. Let me get rid of the timer. Where are we? The session has started now. So let's get rid of the timer. We don't need any more. Gone. In fact, we have started. Just to make sure you're all in the right place, I'll be talking about, as it says there, a course for beginners. This is going to be a instructor-led course for beginners. So if you are either an absolute beginner, you've never done any programming before, then you're in the right place. Or, as often happens, maybe you have had a go at learning some of the basics over the years, perhaps through textbooks, tutorials, but now you'd like a course that starts from the beginning again, but makes sure there are no gaps and gets you to a point where you're confident and ready to move on to the next steps. Then there are two types of beginners, right? Those who've never done anything before, or those who've done a bit of the basics. You're also in the right place. If you are a very proficient Python programmer, you're more than welcome to stay and listen to my voice. But I won't be talking about a course for more intermediate levels. We do have those courses as well, but it's not what I'm talking about today. So today is about beginners. Okay, good. Intro done. Um, Let me tell you very briefly, let me introduce myself. I've introduced the session. You didn't come here to hear about me, of course, but this is an instructor-led course. I will be the instructor for this course, so maybe I'll give you half a minute of who I am. So my name is Stephen, as you might see under my face. I used to be a scientist in the past, so I spent over a decade working as a physicist. And then in the last 10 years or so, I've traded physics for Python, if you like. And I've been focusing on Python education. I've taught all ages from kids to adults, all levels from beginners to intermediate and advanced. So that's what I do now. I teach Python, write about Python, talk about Python, and code in Python. I still enjoy it, obviously. I do a lot of that. About a year ago, I joined Real Python. And for those of you who know Real Python, some of you may be new to Real Python, in which case, welcome to Real Python. But if you're familiar with Real Python, you probably are familiar with either the tutorials, written tutorials, there are many of them at all levels, or possibly the video courses that have been around at Real Python for a long time as well. Of course, if you're a beginner, maybe you've only just started looking at Real Python resources, or maybe you haven't yet. But this year, 2025, we've also introduced live content, which is what I've been working on. I've been designing these courses and running them. We've already run quite a few of these courses, but not for beginners. So it's the first time. You haven't missed the beginners courses, don't worry. The first one starts this coming Monday. So that's the very first one. But we've run this format for intermediate level courses earlier this year. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because we know the format works. We've even fine-tuned it a bit based on the feedback we got. So I'll tell you more about the format of this course because it's important to know that the type of course, not just the content, but the way the course is delivered is what you're looking for and fits for you. Now, by the way, I should have mentioned before, I'll be giving you information here. This link here, let me actually post it on the chats as well. And I did say chats plural. I'll explain why in a second. So there's more information on the link. So lots of what I'll be talking about, and I'll be using that link information about the course. I'm giving you information here, but this is also a Q&A session. Now, because there are large numbers of you, the best way to do Q&A is there are two sets of audiences here. Some of you are on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you know who you are. You're more than welcome to raise your hand and ask the question using your own voice if you want. Or you can use the chat. Others are watching this being streamed on some social media platform. On most of them, you'll be able to write in whatever reply, chat box, whatever there is in the platform you're on, and I should be able to see it on my. So if you see me look to my left, I've got the two chats there. I'll keep an eye on them, keep the questions coming. I'll have lots of time for questions at the end as well, but ask them at any time you want. Good. We designed this course, so I'll be talking about two areas of the course today. Firstly is the format, and this is important because you need to know is the format that works for you, and I'll tell you whom we designed this for in a bit. And then I'll talk about the content as well later on. Now, we didn't want one of those full-time boot camps where you have to give up everything in your life. That's not what we wanted to achieve here. So what we've done is we've designed a course that is flexible while still being thorough and still being instructor-led. And I'll give you more details on how the days and the weeks will work. But the main aim is flexibility because you're all busy with work, study, family, friends, taking the dog for a walk, whatever it might be. So we wanted something that many people can fit within their busy lives. So that's our primary design principle. It's also instructor-led, and it's going to be in a group of students learning together. And that can help in keeping you accountable. Not that you need someone to keep you accountable, but we've all been there, right? We're doing something perhaps a bit on the side, perhaps while we're busy with other things. And sometimes you get to the point, if you're doing it by yourself, I'll leave this till tomorrow. Until tomorrow. Whereas here, because this is going to be a structured course, there's content every day. There's going to be me breathing down your neck in a good way every day. It can help keeping you accountable. And then there are others learning as well, which helps with motivation. So that is, in a nutshell, what the course is designed for. As I've mentioned, we've already run this format earlier this year. It's worked really well, so we're confident it's going to work. Okay. So as I've mentioned, there are two things I want to talk about: the format, which I've already started talking about, and the content. I'll get to the content in a bit. The content is a bit easy in a sense because this is a course for beginners. So we're going to start from the basics. But I'll still show you what's going to happen sort of week after week so that you get a sense of what you expect. Let me start with the format. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift screen. Now, one thing I can tell you about me, I don't like PowerPoint slides. In fact, if you join the course throughout the whole 8 weeks, you won't see a single PowerPoint slide, I'm fairly sure. Instead, what I'm going to do, so rather than show you bullet points, I'm going to write as I go along. So I'm going to sort of write notes as I tell you things, and then we still have a visual thing in front of us. Let me list the key points that I think are relevant to the format of the course. I'll list them quickly, and then I'll go through them and add a bit more. But just to give you in a nutshell. So first of all, how long is it? 8 weeks. And I'll explain why we chose 8 weeks. There's a reason why we chose 8 weeks in a bit. Importantly, it's roughly 1 or 2 hours commitment, if I can spell it, per day. I say roughly, I'll expand a bit more about what's included in these 1 or 2 hours and how they change from day to day. But if you know now that there's no way you can fit in 2 hours a day, we are covering a lot in this course. So you do need to have about 2 hours a day, 1 to 2 hours a day. If you think you cannot commit that, then possibly this course is not for you because we do need that time to be able to cover material. However, it's not a 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours a day course. So this will give you an idea on whether this works for you, your lifestyle, your work commitments, etc., etc. A lot of these 1 to 2 hours, I'll give you more details in a bit, you'll be able to fit them wherever you want in your day. However, we'll still meet 3 times a week live, so 3 live sessions per week. And I did spell sessions wrong there. Yeah, there's only 2 S's in sessions, of course. Again, I'll tell you more about the difference between the sessions, etc., etc. 10 students, that's 10 students per cohort. By the way, I'm recording this session, so the session is being recorded. Those of you on Zoom, I'll send you an email. Those of you on elsewhere, you'll find it on the Real Python YouTube channel afterwards, or find me on social media, send an email to Real Python if you want a recording of the session. 10 students per cohort. I'll tell you again the logics behind that. It's going to be nice small groups so we can discuss. And finally, the forum. I did say I'm going to go through these quickly. Now, let me go through them again. I'm not going to talk for too long, right? But I'll expand a bit more. A reminder, if you have questions at any point, feel free to put them in the chats. If you're on Zoom, you're more than welcome to raise your hands. I will have time for questions at the end, but don't wait till the end. Throw your questions at me whenever you want if you have them. Okay, so 8 weeks. What's special about 8 weeks? Well, there's nothing special about 8 weeks exactly, but we wanted a course that can cover the basics. We can cover them well without having to rush through them so that we can have time to discuss them, work on projects and examples, sort of there's time to brew with these topics. But we also want to cover quite a bit so that by the end of it, we haven't just barely scratched the surface. We've covered a significant amount and we've covered it well. On the other hand, the moment it starts going beyond 8 weeks, if courses get to 12, 15, 20 weeks, especially with the intensity we're at, sort of 2 dense hours every day, energies might start to wane. So 8 weeks feels like the right balance between covering sufficiently without having to rush, without it being an interminable course. Now, throughout those 8 weeks, every day there's going to be material for you to do. And roughly, I've designed the course myself, right? So roughly I've designed it so that it's about 1 to 2 hours commitment per day. Now, this cannot be exact. Why? Because some people might take a bit longer to go through some materials, others will be a bit quicker. Some days there might be a bit more to talk about, so they might be a bit longer. But I always try to then balance them with the day after, there will be a bit less content. So that's why I say roughly it's 1 to 2 hours commitment per day. That's per weekday. I'll tell you what will happen in the weekends, as in nothing formal, but the conversation can still go on in the weekend for those who are still learning. But the main contents are Monday to Friday for 8 weeks. Now, every day, there is no typical day, but roughly every day you'll have some material which I've curated from the real Python resources. Some of it will be written material, some of it will be video lessons. And that's the material that you can go through at any time you need in your day. 5 a.m. in the morning before you go for a run, or at lunchtime, or after work, or whenever you want. So that's the flexibility. Whenever it fits, you can break it up 2 hours. As long as you can find roughly 1 to 2 hours a day, you do that whenever you want. And there'll be exercises for you to work on. This is I'll show you the content later on. You'll see there are many projects and exercises as well as a larger project. So it's not just you absorbing information by reading and watching videos. That's great, but you'll also be working on mini projects, examples, exercises, and then I'll tell you how we're going to share that, what you've done. Now, it's not all do it in your own time. I will be with you throughout these 8 weeks, including, not just, but including through 3 live sessions a week. And these will be a 90-minute, let's call it a structured lesson. And this will be the Wednesday session. So this is some of the content. Instead of delivering it through the daily material, I will deliver it in a live session. Now, the sessions, I'll tell you what the next sessions are. And then we have 2 Q&A sessions per week. These are sort of 60 minutes, but sometimes there are more questions, we'll go further. And by the way, I've seen some questions come in already. I'll come to them in a bit. So I've seen I've seen a question from LinkedIn. Now, what's the difference between these sessions? So this is more of I come with a structure of I want to cover these topics. Often they're going to be either topics we haven't yet covered, so I'm introducing them for the first time in the session, or we're working on projects, or a mixture of the two. The live sessions is not like this one. This is just an information session. There are many of you. I am talking to my computer screens, knowing that some of you are listening there. In these sessions, it will be smaller groups. We'll all be seeing each other, interacting with each other, discussing with each other. So these lessons, even the structured lesson, in fact, I didn't say formal lesson, right? It's a structured lesson in the sense that I have a plan on what I want to achieve in the 90 minutes, but we'll still be discussing in everything I do is informal in terms of teaching. The Q&As are, well, even more informal because I won't come with any agenda. It will be you come with questions that you might have. As you're going through your daily material, you will have questions. You'll be reading something, either you don't understand something, which is perfectly fine when you're learning new things, or this often happens, you think you've understood something, but you want to confirm that the image you've created in your head is the right one. And this is why this is an instructor-led course, because I'm there throughout the course for you to ask questions. And there are two ways to ask those questions. One of them is you keep a note of it so that when we have our next Q&A, these will be Mondays and Fridays, you bring it up live in the Q&A, and then we can have a discussion about it. I often like to say that these are Q&A and D sessions. The D is for discussion, because you ask questions, and yes, I will answer them, but often I'll answer them through discussions, because that's where, when we go down, sort of meander down a path and then come back to the main question, that's where we often learn. It's the journey we take. So 3 sessions per week, roughly 3.5 hours, Wednesday session, and then 2 Q&As. I did mention there's another way you can ask questions. I'll come to that in a bit. Now, unlike the session where I'm talking to many of you, the cohorts will be small. We'll be running 2 cohorts at the same time. So the live sessions will be at different times of the day. These start this coming Monday, by the way, and there are only a few places left because we've been, the booking has been over for a while, but we will limit to 10 students per cohort. And the reason is that we want the group to be small so that in our live sessions, especially, we can have those discussions. It's not me talking to you, it's all of us talking together. If it's a small group, people are normally happier to raise their hand and ask questions or contribute. The live sessions make sense if we are interacting with each other. If it's just me talking to you, you might as well go and watch a video. So that's why it's 10 groups, 10 students per cohort. The moment it starts to get larger, you can't interact. Last but not least, as the cliche goes, but it's true, is the forum. So we have a forum that's dedicated just for the course. What we do in the forum is that the 2 cohorts, so 20 students in all, are all contributing to the forum, because in a forum, it's actually nicer to have a few more voices. In the live sessions, we want it to be smaller. But in the forum, it's where we can have I often think of the forum as the glue that glues everything together. Why? Because the forum goes on 24/7. Well, I do sleep from time to time, but the forum itself doesn't. So the forum is there 24/7. In all of my waking hours, I'll be constantly keeping an eye on it so that whenever questions come in, I can keep the conversations going. So what do you do if you have questions as you're going through the material? Write them down to ask in the Q&A, or you can do both, post it in the forum. And we can have the discussion in the forum, then we can spill over in the Q&A, and then back on the forum. So the idea is that the forum is a constant place where we can keep the conversations going. You're working on some exercises. Post your answer in the forum, and then we can have a discussion. We can get feedback, we can discuss it. Different students might have different versions. That's great. Let's compare the 2 versions. What are the pros? What are the cons? How do we decide? So that's what the forum is for, to keep the conversation going. Look at exercises. I will be posting there every day. Often I'll post my own perspective on the day's topic, perhaps, just to give you a different feel or a different view of the topics, etc., etc. So I was trying to talk quickly there because I wanted to give you this information. This is what the course looks like. Hopefully, you have a good picture of the format of the course. I'll talk about the content in a bit. I'll have a look at, I've got a question, and any questions you have, please do ask them. So if you want me to go through any of this again, or you have questions to sort of clarify something about the format of the course, let me know. So in summary, starts this coming Monday, and therefore 8 weeks takes us till the 5th of December. There will be daily content. I'll show you a bit what it looks like. Roughly 1-2 hours a week. We will meet 3 times a week in live sessions, and these are such an important part because I will be there with you throughout the week in the live sessions and then in the forum on a daily basis. And 10 of you per cohort. I have one question. Okay, I think the question is not necessarily relevant to this, how to combine Kubernetes, Docker, Python, container. That's not a beginner's topic. So here I'm talking about course for beginners. There are plenty of resources on all of those topics at Real Python, but I'll keep my focus here on beginners topics. So any other questions, bring them in. Now, let's move to content. Let me swap here. By the way, this is the The site I've shared with you, realpython.com/live. This is the page. I'm just going to scroll through the course syllabus. I'm not going to read through it, right? You've got the link. I'll share it again later. You can go through it. But I want to very quickly give you a glimpse of what each week looks like. As you can see, it starts this Monday. Bookings will close on Friday, by the way. There are only a few places left. So if you are considering it, by the way, I'll tell you this now. If you have more questions, ask me during this session, but even after the session. If you have my email, send me an email. If not, you'll find me on social media, or send an email to RealPython and say, I was just talking to Stephen on there. Can you pass him this message? And it will come to me. As I scroll, by the way, and as you go to the site, you'll also see the sessions, and this will show you the sessions in your own time zone. I am based in the UK, so on my web browser, it's showing me the times as they are for me. To see whether this works for you, you'll be able to see this in your own time zone. You'll only need one of the groups, right? So you choose either group 1 or group 2. They're the same. It's 10 students per cohort. So that's why there are 2 groups. You only need one of them. So we start off, this is a beginner's course, right? I mentioned there's no prior knowledge needed. Some of you may have done some of the basics already, in which case some of these topics you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember doing that. Although you'll see that a lot of how I teach, I always want to dig a bit underneath the surface and understand how things work together. So even if certain topics you might say, oh, I've covered the topic, you will still get quite a lot of benefit, because I like to sort of make sure that the pieces of the jigsaw fit in nicely together. But if you're a complete beginner, none of these words will make sense. Don't worry, they will after a few weeks when you join the course. So we're going to start with the basics. Some of these are the basic building blocks that you need for anything you want to do in programming. You can't do programming without some of these basics. So we'll start there. You'll notice every week there's going to be mini projects. So learning the theory is important, but applying it to some sort of project right from the start, I think is equally important. So we will have mini projects running throughout these first few weeks. I'll tell you what's going to happen at the end. And the idea is that we're also working on a project that is obviously using the topics we've covered this week. And in later weeks, the mini project will cover topics from that week and previous weeks as well, right? So we'll build in complexity. And the way the mini projects will work is that I'll break them up into chunks, sort of not necessarily every day, but many days. They'll be like, okay, let's work on this aspect of the project. You can have a go first. Try working on the task for the day yourself. Post the code in the forum. We discuss it there. I will also have videos that you can then watch at the end of the day once you've tried your hand at it. I'll have videos on sort of discussing them as well. So in a mixture of you working on the project, me showing you in videos, and then discussing these in the Q&As, in the live sessions, and on the forum, the projects will progress throughout the week. Okay, I'll speed a bit through this. Week 2, iteration is a really important aspect of all of programming. It's the process of repeating something over and over again. This is a common task in programming, right? You have something you want to do for many items or for several repetitions. And that's what iteration is. And for loops are one way of doing it. Lists is, for those of you who've never done Python before, programming is about storing data and then doing something with those data. And the storing of data is really important. There are different types of boxes, if you like, to store different types of things in. And lists is one of them. It's a very important one. So we'll be talking about this important container, if you like, to store information that we use a lot in programming, as well as another weirdly named one. All of this will make sense. We move on to week 3. This is the superpower in programming. So functions are mini programs, standalone mini programs that you can define yourself that do one task. And then you can keep reusing them whenever you want to do that task. It might not sound like much if you've not come across functions before, but this is what makes programming so flexible and powerful, because you can define this mini program once and then keep using it as much as you want wherever you want. So we'll talk about defining functions in week 3, more mini projects, as you can see. Week four, I've already talked about data structures. This is where we store data. Remember, we talked about lists and the strangely named one that I didn't mention. There are many more of these types of, so imagine there are different boxes for different things, right? And that's what we're doing here. So we'll talk more about the different options we have to store data in programs, depending on what the data is, how we want to use it, etc., etc. Week five, we move on to object-oriented programming. Some of you may have heard of this, some of you may not. Now, object-oriented programming, or OOP amongst friends, is often considered a bit more of an intermediate topic. So why am I introducing this in a beginner's course? And there are two reasons for this. First of all, OOP is an important part of modern programming. You will see it used all over the place. You may need to use it yourself. So since it's such an important cornerstone of modern programming, it's useful to have some introduction of it, not all the details perhaps, but a basic introduction of it early on. And that's why I think it's useful to get an introduction to this topic fairly early in your Python learning journey. Second reason, Python, the language, is inherently an object-oriented programming language. So once you start digging underneath the surface of Python, once you start seeing how things are connected, it's all object-oriented principles. So understanding some of the basics of this, the fancy word is it's a paradigm, it's a style of coding. Understanding some of the basics, even if we don't know the details, helps us understand how Python works better. So as we start to learn about this intermediate-ish topic, we'll start to look back at things we've done in weeks 1 to 4, and then things will start to click in place because, this is why this works that way. So those are the two reasons why I'm introducing OOP fairly early. It will serve as a good consolidation of other things we've done as well. Week 6, we talk a bit more about object-oriented programming, and then we talk about, lovely word, debugging. Programming is one of those professions that owns up to mistakes. Not many professions do that. Programming does. So every programmer will say, look, I am going to make mistakes in my code. I'm going to introduce bugs. The stuff where the code either doesn't work or it gives you an output, but the output is wrong. So it still doesn't work. Those are bugs. And finding bugs, not always straightforward. Sometimes they're obvious. Sometimes they're not obvious. So finding bugs, knowing where they are in your code, knowing how to fix them, there is an art and a science to this. So we'll start talking about some of these in week 6. Now, weeks 1 to 6 are where all the content, new content is, because once we get to week 7 and week 8, we're going to be working, the final 2 weeks of the course are working on a project. So we will have lots of mini projects in weeks 1 to 6. But week 7 and 8, we have one large project, larger obviously, will focus on those 2 weeks. As you would expect, this project uses pretty much every topic we've learned about rather in weeks 1 to 6. And every day, I've broken down this project into 10 units because there are 10 days, right? 5 week 7 and 5 in week 8. And every day, just like with the mini projects, but this time on a grander scale, I'll set the tasks for the day. We can discuss them on the forum. You have a go at writing the code. You share your code on the forum. We compare your version with someone else's version, with my version, perhaps. It doesn't mean my version is the best. There's always more versions to discuss, and comparing different ways of solving the same problem is really great. And then at the end of the day, I'll put everything together and say, okay, good. This is what this is my version of what we have at the end of the first day. Let's move on. So that's going to be our final project. Week 7 and 8. Good. I have talked a lot there. I went quickly and I've managed to get through what I wanted to talk to mostly in about half an hour. I'll glance again at the questions in a bit in case you have questions. I will, however, point out a couple of things. When you're looking at times, depending where you are in the world, unfortunately, there's daylight saving. And as many of you may know, daylight saving switches off at different times in different parts of the world. So depending where you are, week three normally might be the one which is slightly out of sync. You can see in my case, the sessions are at 11 in the morning and at 9 in the evening. But in week three, they actually switch for 1 week until they go back to 11 and 21. Reason being is that we have to pick one thing to anchor to, and we're anchoring the times to sort of the North American time zones, and the daylight saving shifts at different times during the world. Why? I have no idea. Hopefully they'll scrap daylight saving at some point and save us all these headaches. But anyway, just in case time is important to know exactly what time your sessions are, when you go to this page, realpython.com/live, from your browser, you'll see the times in your time zone. Keep an eye on week three in case it changes for you. Good. I've got a question coming in from Dennis. Will we be using notebooks or IDEs? So the answer is whatever you want, but IDEs is more beginner friendly. So for those who don't know what IDEs or notebooks are, Python is the language. So you need Python on your computer. By the way, we give you instructions on installing everything you need to install, right? But you also need something to write Python in the sense that the comparison is English is the language, but when you're on your computer, well, you need something to write English in, right? You might use Google Docs or Word or some other software. You need software to write in English. Likewise, we need software to write in Python. And there are many different versions. Some of them fall under the category of IDEs, integrated development environments. And they are sort of a one software where you can do everything. So I will be using those. Those who don't have a preference, I'll be suggesting you use those. But if someone already has a preference on using something else, by all means, the platform you use to code is not important. It's the code we do that matters. So I'm agnostic on what software you want to use. If you don't know anything about it, I'll suggest one or two things to look at. But Dennis, if you're asking, I'm guessing you might have a preference already. You can use whatever you want. Can you give an example, Andrew, project-based learning, can you give an example of what a mini project in weeks 1 to 6 would entail? I'll give you an example of one project. I think this is week 4 project, and it doesn't matter here. We're going to write some code to take a book, a digital version of a book, and find all the words used in the book and how often they've been used. Now, bear in mind, this is a beginner's course. So the mini projects we're doing, especially, the project at the end is a bit more ambitious, but the mini projects, we're fitting them in as we're learning the basics. And because we're still learning the basics, there's a limit on how much we can do. But that's the sort of project we have there. So then we're going to look at first of all, how do I read the text from a text file? How do I clean that data up for what I need? I need to count words and count how many of each word there is. So there is reading data, cleaning up the data, then thinking of the algorithms you need. I know how I would do this manually, but how do I get Python to do it for me? How do I present the data? So that's the sort of scale of the projects. They're not extensive projects because we're fitting them in while we're learning. The project in week 7 and 8 is different. So here we're going to write a fully functioning app. So we will all work on the same project, but we might all have different versions. So this is going to be a 2-week project. Again, the scale is, we're not going to solve the world's problems in 2 weeks, but this is going to be a chunkier project with lots of moving parts fitting together. Excellent. I can see, Andrew, I answered your question. That's good. Okay, a number of people asked me to share the link. Let me share the link again. realpython.com/live. In fact, I'll show you. I've posted in the chats. If you can't see it in whatever platform you're on, let me go back there. That's the one, realpython.com/live. So this is the page I was showing you. A lot of what I mentioned there, you'll find it there. So you'll find all the dates, the times in your time zone, the content of the course if you want to know exactly what topics you'll be covering, of course, how to enroll and price and the beginning date, end date, etc., etc. A reminder, this course starts this Monday. And at the moment, we're not running a huge number of these courses. So I know already that in January, it's going to be an intermediate course that's running. So the beginner's course will not run for several months after this one. I am running all these courses, but we're not, we're quite keen on we're not trying to run too many of these courses with random people delivering them. So I'm running all of these courses. Therefore, it's limited how many we can run at the moment. So this one starts on Monday, this coming Monday. We'll run for 8 weeks. And then it's going to run again probably at some point in the middle of next year. Good. Any more questions? I'll wrap up in a second and I'll sort of summarize again very briefly what I've mentioned. But from my point of view, I'm looking on my notes, which you can't see, but I have them in front of me here. I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover. So I'll have a look at any more questions. I think good. Yeah. So Shair, I've just shared realpython.com/live. As I've mentioned, this is a beginner's course. If some of you are there and thinking, oh, I like this format, but I'm not a beginner. I've actually done lots of Python. I'm more, we do have intermediate courses. We've run them already this year. The next one is running in January. Today, I want to talk about the beginner's course, but if you're interested in intermediate, contact me. I'll send you the link and you can sort of look at the same type of course, but obviously with different content coming up in January for intermediate. Good. Let me go back to, where shall I go back to? Let me go back to my summary here, my mind map. So in a nutshell, it's a beginner's course. If you have never done Python before or programming before, that's fine. We are going to start from the basics, including on day zero, what do you need to install on your computer to code in Python, if you need that. But some of you, many beginners tend to be not absolute beginners, but they've done a bit. Maybe over the years they've started a bit and then stopped, or they've learned a few things, but you still feel you're a beginner. You still feel like you want to learn those topics again and make sure they're nicely connected together, get the confidence you need so that you can then move on to post-beginner stage. So if you're either of those two types of beginners, this course is for you. If you're unsure, contact me. We can have a chat. You can tell me more about what you know, what your situation is, and I'll give you an honest opinion. Yes, this course is for you, or no, maybe you need a different level course. Make sure you do have 1 or 2 hours a day. You don't need 5, 6, 7 hours a day, but do make sure if you can't commit to that time, again, this course may not be the right one for you because we are going to be covering a lot in 8 weeks. We will meet, so that content, you can do whatever time in the day you want. That's the flexibility side of it, but we will meet 3 times a week. Of course, these are fixed times. There are 2 different times in the day, as you've seen, realpython.com/live to see them in your time zone. But those are the only fixed times where we will all meet at that time. Otherwise, the rest of the material you can cover in your own time. 10 students per cohort and lots of discussions, not just in the live sessions, but also in the forum. Good. I will finish off with this page just so that you have the link there again, and you can see the lovely graphic that our in-house designer created for these courses. We like, if you're used to real Python material, you've seen these images. They're in this, you can tell straight away they're real Python. I couldn't find the word I wanted. Alvin, 7 years of Python experience, but I am self-taught and only study what I need for the moment. Okay, there was no question there, but again, I stress this is a beginner's course. It's going to start from the beginning. So it's suitable for those who've never done Python before. But often, I've taught beginners for the last 10 years. Often, beginners have come to me saying, well, I've actually already covered a bit of for loops, a bit of if statements. I know that stuff, but I really don't feel like I know it well enough. So in that case, of course, certain things you would have seen already, but will be connecting looking at the roots and seeing what connects everything together. So let me know, Alvin, if there was a question there you want me to answer. Good. In that case, I'll wait a bit longer in case any questions come in. but I've told you everything I want to tell you. Um, so if you're interested, realpython.com/live. As I've mentioned, there are a few spots left because both cohorts are very close to full. Booking closes on Friday because the course starts on Monday. So it really starts in the weekend because that's when I open up the forum, share the links with the students, and you know, you don't need to do anything in the weekend. But so deadline is Friday, few places left. If you're unsure whether this is the right course for you, you can ask now, of course, but if you'd rather ask me separately, email me. If you're one of those on Zoom, you have an email from me, you'll get another one later today. Just reply to it. If you're on some streaming platform, you'll probably find me on that streaming platform, or just send an email to info@realpython.com. Tell them, can you send this to Stephen, please? And it will come to me straight away. Hopefully, for some of you, this is the course you're looking for. I realize that, maybe it's not the level you want, maybe it's not the format you want, maybe you can't quite commit the time at the moment. But if it is what you're looking for, hopefully I'll see you for the next 8 weeks, starting from this Monday. Or if not, maybe in a future one, but it will be around mid-2026 when we'll run this course again. Thank you for joining. I'll keep glancing one last time. No more questions. So hopefully I'll see some of you. I can't see you all, obviously. I'll see some of you starting on Monday for this course. Bye-bye.